The restaurant's crystalline windows refracted the city's neon glow into streaks of fractured color across the polished floor, but Kai Mercer hardly noticed. He sat stiffly at a small round table, tugging at the cuff of his too-tight jacket. His co-workers had sworn this blind date would help him finally stop acting like a wrench with legs. So far, it was going about as well as any maintenance report he had ever filed, boring, awkward, and headed for failure. Across from him, his supposed match, a slender feral woman with 6 opalescent eyes, was already shifting restlessly. She drummed her claws against the table's surface and sniffed the air as though testing its quality. "You're human," she said flatly, as if announcing a defect. "Yes," Kai admitted, forcing a smile. "Born and raised on Earth's Mars colony. Engineer, propulsion systems, minor certifications in exoframes." "Fragile," she cut in, her voice sharp with disdain. "Always breaking. Always soft. I prefer durability." She flicked her gaze toward a broad-shouldered Cernax soldier 2 tables away, then returned her attention to Kai. This was a mistake. She stood before dessert menus had even appeared. With a toss of her silvered hair membranes, she swept toward the exit. Kai exhaled, long and bitter. He should have expected it. The galaxy had no shortage of prejudices, but few stung more than hearing again and again that humans, despite their stubborn knack for surviving, were simply too weak to be worth anyone's time. He stayed seated for a moment, staring into his untouched glass of synth wine, then pushed himself up and left before the waiter could return with a sympathetic smile. The city's upper promenade stretched like a ribbon of chrome and glass above the sprawl of towers below. Kai walked without direction, the evening air humming with a faint thrum of air-car traffic. He replayed the last hour in his head, frustration churning with each step. What did his crewmates expect? That some alien stranger would overlook his clumsy small talk and calloused hands? That she would see beyond the grease stains that never quite left his skin? He turned a corner, not watching where he was going, and collided with a uniformed attendant. The man bowed quickly. "My apologies, sir. The ambassador awaits in the lounge. This way, please." "I think you've got the wrong," Kai began, but the attendant was already ushering him down a side corridor, efficient and unyielding. Before Kai could protest again, a door hissed open, spilling warm light into the hall. He was pushed gently but firmly inside. The room smelled faintly of ozone and scorched metal. At its center sat a throne, not decorative but mechanical, a fusion of blackened alloy and living sinew. Tubes pulsed with dim bioluminescence, disappearing into the figure bound to the chair. She was immense even in stillness, her scaled body draped in crimson robes stitched with gold. Horns swept back from her brow like jagged blades. Her eyes, slitted, burning with faint inner fire, locked onto him the instant he entered. "You dare." Her voice was low thunder, a growl layered with centuries of authority. "Who sent you?" Kai froze, hands half raised. "There's been a mistake. I was just—" Silence. The word struck like a hammer. "No one enters my chamber unbidden." The attendant was gone. The door sealed. Kai swallowed. Every story he had ever heard whispered about the dragon queen Zephyra crowded his thoughts. Conqueror of star systems, breaker of fleets, a living engine of war. And now crippled. The rumors said she had been paralyzed during her last campaign, bound forever to the throne that kept her alive. Forgotten, feared, left to rot in gilded exile. "I'll just leave," Kai tried, edging toward the door. The chair shifted with a hiss of hydraulics. Metal claws scraped against the floor. Zephyra's gaze burned hotter. "You reek of grease and burnt circuitry. Not assassin. Not diplomat. An engineer." Her nostrils flared, a short laugh devoid of humor escaping her. "How amusing. My enemies send me a tinkerer as a jester." Something in Kai, still raw from the failed date, snapped. Better a tinkerer than someone who spends eternity sulking in a chair. The air chilled. For a moment, Kai thought he had signed his death warrant. The throne whined as though it would lunge, but Zephyr's body did not move beyond a flicker in her claws. Her eyes narrowed. Instead of fury, a thin smile curved across her lips. You have courage, little human. Or stupidity. Both taste alike. She leaned forward as far as the chair allowed. Tell me, engineer, do you believe you can fix what no surgeon, no scientist, no sorcerer of flesh and metal has managed? Kai hesitated. Every rational instinct screamed to deny it, to escape this chamber and vanish into the crowded city. Yet looking at her, once the most feared being in the quadrant, now trapped in rusting machinery, something tugged at him. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. He too knew what it was to be dismissed, underestimated, forgotten. I don't know, he said finally, voice steady. But I'd try. Her laughter this time was deep, dangerous, and strangely alive. Then you shall. Not as guest. Not as ally. As punishment. She gestured with a twitch of one claw toward the throne's surrounding apparatus. For daring to insult me, you will serve 1 lunar cycle. If you fail, I will crush what is left of you with my teeth. Kai's throat tightened, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. And if I succeed? The queen tilted her head, considering. Firelight flickered within her pupils. Then perhaps I will allow you to walk out with your bones intact. Perhaps more. The throne hissed again, settling into silence. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. Kai stood there, the weight of an impossible task pressing onto his shoulders. Yet beneath the fear, a strange spark lit within him, anger, curiosity, challenge. He gave a short nod.
Fine.
1 cycle. Zephyra's smile widened, sharp as blades. So be it, human. You belong to me now. The door unsealed behind him, the attendant returning as if nothing unusual had happened. But Kai did not move immediately. He remained standing in the shadow of the paralyzed queen, heart pounding, realizing his life had changed in a way no blind date ever could. When he finally stepped out, her laughter followed him down the hall, a sound both mocking and hungry, promising trials ahead. And though every sensible thought in his head urged him to run, Kai knew he would return. Something in her fire had already caught on him, and it would not let go. You said. Kai stood before the throne again the next morning, the faint scent of scorched circuitry lingering in the chamber. He had not slept well. Visions of claws, fire, and mechanical tendrils had chased him through restless dreams. Now, as he set his toolkit down with a clink, he found Zephyra's eyes fixed on him with a predator's stillness. You returned, she observed, her voice curling like smoke. I half expected your species' famous cowardice to win out. Wouldn't want to disappoint you, Kai muttered, opening the kit. Tools gleamed under the chamber's low light, humble things compared to the throne's monstrous machinery. Wrenches, microdrivers, a neural probe he had scavenged years ago. Nothing designed to fix the technology of empires. Zephyra's lips curled faintly. You look at the throne as if it were an enemy to dismantle. Maybe it is. He circled the machine, eyes narrowing. The throne was less a seat than a prison, its architecture a blend of biomechanical grafting and ancient alien alloys. Tubes ran from her spine into a lattice of conduits. Their rhythm was uneven, like a heart stuttering. It's keeping you alive, but it's also chaining you down. The queen's claws twitched, faintly, involuntarily. Many have said so. None have changed it. Kai leaned close to a junction where metal fused with scale. He saw old scar tissue, ruptured again and again. Whoever had first designed this integration had not cared for her body, only her function as a weapon. The thought made his jaw clench. You've had specialists, surgeons, cyberneticists. What did they miss? He asked, more to himself than her. They lacked what your kind calls imagination, Zephyr replied. They obeyed the diagrams. They followed the data. And when it failed, they bowed and left. Kai touched the casing, feeling the faint vibration of power flowing through it. Improvised stabilizers, mismatched parts, patched again and again, like an old ship kept running past its lifespan. He almost smiled. This was familiar. Machines don't care about pride, he said quietly. They respond to patience. to stubbornness. Two things humans are very good at. Zephyra snorted. You confuse self-destructive persistence with virtue. Maybe. But sometimes persistence is all we have. He set to work. The first hours passed in silence, broken only by the soft hiss of the throne systems and the occasional scrape of his tools. He rerouted a decayed fiber, installed a microactuator, tightened a failing joint. Sweat collected along his hairline, and his hands grew raw, but he pressed on, adjusting and testing, listening to the machine's heartbeat. Zephyra watched him without moving, her face unreadable. At last she spoke. Why do you care? You could escape. You could vanish into the crowd, and I would not hunt you. Kai wiped his brow with the back of his hand. Because I'm tired of people assuming I'm fragile. Tired of being dismissed before I even start. If I can fix what no one else has, maybe that proves something. Proves what? Her voice was sharp, testing. That we're not as weak as everyone thinks. Silence stretched between them. Then, so soft he almost missed it, Zephyra laughed. It was not the cruel thunder of before, but something lower, like a spark catching and kindling. Hours bled into days. Each morning Kai returned. Each night he left exhausted. The throne yielded its secrets reluctantly, like a beast resisting a leash. He mapped its pathways, rewired connections, coaxed responses with gentle adjustments. Sometimes he failed, and alarms blared until he slammed the system back into stasis. Sometimes he succeeded, and lights pulsed steady for the first time in decades. On the fifth day, while recalibrating a neural loop, he noticed her claws tremble, just barely, a twitch. He froze. Did you feel that? Zephyra's breath caught. She lifted her gaze from the floor, staring at her own hand. The movement was slight, almost imperceptible, but real. For the first time in centuries, her body had responded. Her eyes blazed with sudden intensity. Again. Kai adjusted, rerouted, urged the circuits to comply. Another twitch. A fraction stronger. Her jaw clenched, fangs bared in something between fury and hope. It's working, he whispered, half to himself. Her voice shook, low and dangerous. Do not toy with me, human. I'm not. It's real. He stepped back, chest rising with exhilaration. This throne doesn't own you. Not completely. Zephyra closed her eyes. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then she opened them again, and something had shifted in her gaze. Not gratitude. Never that. But something warmer than contempt. You persist where greater minds surrendered, she said slowly. Perhaps your species' fragility forces you to fight harder. Kai smirked. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to know when to quit. Her laughter returned, fuller now, edged with disbelief. Stubborn fire. That is your gift. He packed his tools, hands trembling from fatigue. The throne hummed quieter, steadier, as if acknowledging the changes. Zephyra reclined, her expression unreadable, though the faint twitch of her claws betrayed a secret triumph. As Kai left the chamber, he caught her watching him, not as a condemned intruder, not as prey, but as something else. He wasn't sure what yet, but he felt it like heat against his back. For the first time since he'd stumbled into her life, he believed he might actually succeed. And though he would not admit it aloud, a part of him already looked forward to returning tomorrow, to see just how much more stubborn fire might achieve. You said. The city's skies burned crimson one evening as Kai emerged from the palace workshops, his clothes smelling of solder and ozone. For 2 weeks he had labored beside the throne, weaving new pathways through its ancient machinery, coaxing Zephyra's body back from lifelessness one trembling motion at a time. She had shifted a finger now, flexed a claw, even turned her head more sharply than before. Each tiny victory left her shaking with exertion, yet her eyes blazed fiercer with every success. Kai should have felt triumph, but unease gnawed at him. Something in the city's air had changed. He discovered the reason in the form of whispers. Merchants huddled in doorways, soldiers tightened patrols, and the palace attendants spoke less openly, their faces drawn. The names spread like a spark across dry fields, Draken Syndicate. Zephyra's old generals, once sworn to her, now gathering strength beyond the outer moons. Their return meant only one thing. They had learned their queen was weakened, and they intended to seize what fragments of her empire remained. When he entered the throne chamber that night, Zephyra was already waiting, her scales gleaming in the dim light. She did not waste words. "They come," she said. Kai set his toolkit down carefully. "The Syndicate?" Her nod was almost imperceptible. "Vorith leads them. Once my strongest claw. Now a jackal fattened on scraps." He studied her face. There was no fear, only a simmering rage that threatened to ignite the air. Yet he sensed the truth she would not voice. Her body was not ready. Even with all his repairs, she remained tethered to the throne, dependent on circuits and stabilizers. Against seasoned warlords, she would be little more than a symbol to be shattered. "We have time," he said, though the words felt thin. "If I can finish integrating the exoframe, you'll have mobility." Her eyes narrowed. "It will not hold. You know this." "It might. With reinforcement, with constant recalibration. Then you will sit behind me in battle, human?" Her voice was both mocking and serious. "Will you crawl with your tools while I face blades?" Kai's jaw tightened. "If that's what it takes." A long silence stretched, broken only by the throne's slow respiration. Finally, Zephyra bared her teeth in something between a grin and a snarl. "You are absurd. And yet, perhaps absurdity is what I need." Training began the next day. It was not the training of soldier and recruit, but of will against despair. Kai forced Zephyra through exercises, pushing her to attempt motions that left her body trembling. At first she cursed him, her voice laced with venom. He pushed back, hurling barbs that might have cost any other man his life. He told her she was rusting, cowardly, chained more by pride than by metal. Each insult fueled her fury, and each surge of fury coaxed another flicker of movement from her body. Their rhythm grew strange, almost ritualistic. She would lash out with contempt, calling him a fragile worm, a brittle tinkerer of spare parts. He would counter with sarcasm and stubborn orders, daring her to prove him wrong. Somewhere between the insults and the sweat, respect began to form, a jagged, reluctant bond forged in the heat of their clashes. One evening, as he adjusted a stabilizer after hours of drills, Zephyra spoke more softly than usual. "My generals believe I am finished. They see only a relic trapped in iron. That is why they gather. They think to inherit what I built." Kai glanced up, surprised by the vulnerability threading her words. "Then we prove them wrong." Her gaze fixed on him. "If I fail, the galaxy will remember me as a crippled queen defeated in her final hour. That humiliation I cannot bear." "Then don't fail," he said simply, though his own heart pounded with doubt. She laughed, though there was little mirth in it. "Your species has no poetry. Only blunt stones to throw." "And sometimes blunt stones crack the strongest glass," he replied. The night before the Syndicate's arrival, Kai unveiled his final work. The throne, once rooted to the ground, now bore a skeletal exoframe, extensions of alloy and fiber that could carry her weight and mimic the power her muscles had lost. It was crude, dangerous, and untested. If it failed mid-battle, it could tear her body apart. Zephyra regarded it with a predator's hunger. "This is your answer? A coffin on legs?" "It's not perfect," Kai admitted, "but it gives you a chance. More than the throne alone." She extended her hand, fingers trembling as they gripped the frame's controls. The machinery hummed, adjusting. For the first time in centuries, she pushed herself upright, rising higher than the throne's prison had allowed. Each motion was agonizing, the frame groaning with the strain of her weight, but she stood. The chamber shook with her roar. Not the muted growl of recent weeks, but a true bellow, raw and thunderous, echoing through the palace halls. Kai's chest clenched at the sound, part terror, part exhilaration. She sagged back into the seat, sweat beading along her scaled brow. "Better to burn once more than to rot forever," she whispered. Kai knelt to secure the final stabilizers. "Then we burn together." Her eyes met his, blazing with equal parts challenge and approval. "Engineer of stubborn fire," she said. "That will be your name when they write of this night." Outside, alarms began to wail as the first syndicate ships pierced the atmosphere. Shadows streaked across the blood-red sky, and the city trembled under the weight of their approach. Inside the throne chamber, amidst the hiss of machinery and the crackle of awakening power, Zephyra straightened her spine. Her claws flexed, her gaze sharpened, and for the first time in centuries, the Dragon Queen prepared to meet her enemies on her feet. Kai, standing behind her with tools in hand and determination burning in his chest, knew there would be no turning back. The battle was coming, and with it the chance to prove that humanity's stubborn fire could rekindle even a fallen queen. The palace shook as the first blasts from syndicate warships struck the city's defense grid. Red light bled through the crystalline walls, casting fractured patterns across Zephyra's throne. Kai stood behind her, fastening the last conduits into the exo-frame, his hands trembling not from fear but from the weight of what was about to unfold. Every calculation, every improvised adjustment had led to this moment. If the systems held, she would walk. If they failed, the queen would be destroyed from the inside out. Zephyra's eyes burned with an old, terrible hunger. "They think me broken," she said, voice low but steady. "Let them see otherwise." The throne groaned as the frame activated. Power surged through the conduits, and Kai felt the vibration beneath his palms. Slowly, impossibly, she rose. Her claws scraped against the floor, her weight pressing into legs that had not carried her in centuries. The machinery whined, but it held. Kai adjusted a stabilizer on the fly. "Easy. One step at a time." She snarled but obeyed, forcing herself forward. Each movement was agony, visible in the tightness of her jaw, but she did not falter. By the time the great doors of the throne chamber thundered open, Zephyra stood upright, towering, her robes dragging across the floor like a banner of blood. The first syndicate warriors stormed inside, scaled brutes clad in armor etched with her own sigils, symbols they had stolen to justify their betrayal. At their head marched Vorith, massive and scarred, his fangs bared in a mocking grin. "So it is true," he called, voice carrying over the clash of steel in the distant halls. "The queen lives, but only as a shadow. I came expecting to find a corpse." His gaze slid over Kai with contempt. "And I find her guarded by a human servant. How fitting." Zephyra's frame hissed as she stepped forward, each movement accompanied by the grind of alloy against stone. "Vorith," she said, her voice rolling like thunder through the chamber. "You dare to stand before me wearing the banners you stole?" He laughed. "I stand before a husk. Your reign ended with your spine snapped. The galaxy will remember Vorith the Liberator, not Zephyra the crippled." Kai bristled, but Zephyra raised a claw to silence him. Her gaze never left Vorith. "Come then. Test your liberation." The chamber erupted into violence. Syndicate soldiers surged forward, and Kai dove behind the throne, hands flying across the control interface. He rerouted power, balancing energy between mobility and strength, every adjustment life or death. Zephyra moved with brutal grace, the exo-frame amplifying each strike. Her claws slashed through armor, her tail whipped with crushing force, and her roar shook the walls. But the strain was immense. Warning lights flared across the console, and Kai cursed under his breath, fingers flying to compensate. "Hold together," he muttered. "Just hold." Vorith waded through the chaos, scattering bodies with each swing of his warhammer. His eyes locked on Zephyra, and he charged. The clash shook the chamber as hammer met claw, sparks and blood sprang across the floor. Zephyra staggered, but did not fall. The exo-frame screamed under the pressure, and Kai rerouted everything into reinforcement, burning out circuits as he went. "You are weaker than I remember," Vorith sneered, pressing her back. "Stronger than you deserve," she growled, driving her claws into his chest plate. Metal shrieked, and he roared in pain. The throne shuddered, systems overloading, and Kai slammed a fist against the console. "Come on." He bypassed failsafes, risking meltdown. The circuit stabilized for a heartbeat longer, just enough. With a final roar, Zephyra heaved forward, shattering Vortha's armor and sending him crashing to the floor. Silence fell over the chamber as Syndicate warriors froze, staring at the sight of their leader broken at her feet. Zephyra loomed above him, chest heaving, her frame sparking with smoke. "Remember this," she declared, voice echoing like fire across stone. "Your queen is not finished." The soldiers hesitated, then broke, retreating in a rush of clattering armor. Their courage had fled with Vortha's fall. The palace grew quiet again, save for the wheeze of damaged machinery. Zephyr swayed, her strength faltering. Kai rushed forward, catching the control lines before they snapped. "Easy. I've got you." Her claws trembled, but she remained upright, her gaze locked on him. For the first time, there was no mockery in her eyes. Only raw, unguarded truth. "I had forgotten," she whispered, her voice rough. "Forgotten the taste of battle, the burn of life in my veins. I thought I would never know joy again." Kai steadied her, heart pounding. "Guess blind dates aren't always disasters," he said without thinking. For a breathless moment, silence lingered. Then Zephyr laughed, a sound deep and rich, shaking the chamber more than any weapon. Not the cruel laughter of before, but something freer, something alive. She sank back into the throne as the exo-frame locked her in place, smoke curling from its joints. "You risked your life for me, human. You defied death with little more than stubborn fire. Tell me why." Kai met her gaze, exhaustion pulling at his voice, but conviction steady. "Because I was tired of being overlooked, and because you deserve to stand again, even if just once." Her expression softened, the faintest curve of a smile ghosting across her lips. "Then you will stand beside me, not as servant, but as ally." The chamber lights dimmed as the systems finally powered down, but within the silence, a new beginning pulsed between them. Zephyra, reborn in fire, and Kai, the fragile human who refused to break, had forged something neither had expected, not just survival, but the promise of a future unshackled by despair. Outside, the city still burned, and the Syndicate was not yet defeated. But inside the throne room, in the laughter of a queen and the weary grin of an engineer, the first spark of something greater than either of them had been lit, and it would not be extinguished. "You said